Okay, good evening everybody. I think I gave you some information, but I will repeat everything just for the sake of those who are following the class online. You should be, if you have your outlines, on page 9 out of 15 pages of your outline. Yes, Jeanette? What? Are you recording? Yeah, just started. Thank you so much. Good. Page 9 of 15. People that watches online, I don't know the length, how long you watch it, but if you do not have your outlines of the book, it's difficult to follow. So you need to crash an email that you will find on the website, and an email, thesword@shaw.ca, and give us an email, and you will be receiving, based on providing your email, the outline for the class and so on. Good to see you. Good to see you, sister. Hello. Come and join us. We're just about ready to pray. Okay, beyond page 9 of 15, capital K, the law of pilgrimage. I'll repeat a few things. The only thing that I did not do with you with this is the summary. So that's what I will do at the very bottom of your page 15. This should not be long. And later on, we will carry on with the rest of it in the board, many words to note and so on. But we will see if we reach that part. Basically, the words that you see on the board behind me belong to the law of against the occult, page 10. Okay, lowercase d, against the occult, because I will explain quite extensively what the occult is all about. But if we don't reach this, don't worry about it. Make a note of them, and I will come back next week. Let's pray. Father Almighty, we come into your presence once again, although we are always into your presence, but we come physically as a small cluster. Not a church. TSM is not a church, but we have members of churches from all over the place, even online and so on. Thank you for the privilege that we have to study these books, to scrutinize them carefully. Help us to dispose our heart properly, to leave aside right now work, bank account, whatever, things to pay, or the struggles of life, everyday life, to be able to absorb what we need to absorb for tonight. Once again, thank you, and guide us in your spirit which is abide in us. We have the power and the capacity to understand the scriptures simply because we are given the Spirit, and with it we can understand the deep things of God. We give you thanks in Jesus' name. Amen. Please be on summary at the very bottom of your page 9, chapter 16, verses 16 to 17. Chapter 16, verses 16 to 17, 2 verses. Basically, it's to summarize the Feast of Passover. If you go to small k, the law of pilgrimage festivals. Passover is obligatory to go. Weeks, which is Pentecost, obligatory to go. And I gave you the tabernacles also, the Feast of Booths. In the 1,000-year reign and under the Mosaic law, these were the three pilgrimages that were necessary to do to worship the Lord and so on. Sister, would you like a Bible? Would you like one?
Yes, thank you.
Pardon me?
Yes, please.
Yes. Okay. Germaine, you just pass it behind. It's okay. There you go. Just go down this way. Good. All right. So what is the summary of these things and so on? So I will give them to you right now as we summarize this. I just said it basically. 3 times a year, these festivals have to be kept at the place chosen by God, 16 to 17. 3 times in a year, all your males shall appear before Jehovah your God in the place which he chooses, at the Feast of Unleavened Bread, which is Passover. You see, it's a good example. When he says Feast of Unleavened Bread, it does include automatically Passover, the Feast of Weeks, and the Feast of Booths. They shall not appear before Jehovah empty-handed. Every man shall give as he is able, according to the blessing of Jehovah your God, which he has given you. Okay? So this is not allowed to keep in your backyard, these 3 festivals. You need to go to Jerusalem, and before Jerusalem they needed to go to Shiloh, where the portable tabernacle was standing. We are done for that part. Right now you turn into your outline to page 10. We're done with this. So now we're going to look at some civil laws and so on. I'm going to guide you. I'm going to make a bit of place for me to write additional information right here. So now we look at number 2, parenthetical number 2, the civil laws. Basically, it goes from chapter 16, verse 18, that you can visualize in your Bible. Verse 18 is in bold character. And it goes straight down to 2020. It's a lengthy section. You can see all the subdivisions in it until lowercase I. So we take one portion of it at a time, and it's going to be quite good. It's not going to be lengthy. The first division in lowercase a, the law of judge and officials. Come with me in 16:18 to 17:13. I'm going to read a few verses and then stop and make some comments and carry on. Lowercase a, the law of judge and officials. Let's read it. You shall appoint, chapter 16, verse 18. You shall appoint for yourself judges. Basically, the word judges on your outline should be plural also. And officers in all your towns which Jehovah your God has given you, according to your tribes, circle tribes, and they shall judge the people with righteous judgment. You shall not distort, circle distort, justice. You shall not be partial, and you shall not take a bribe, circle distorting, partiality, and bribe. For a bribe blinds the eyes of the wise and perverts the word of righteousness. Justice and only justice. In the Hebrew, it says justice, justice. Circle this. You shall pursue, that you may live and possess the land which the Lord your God has given you, the Holy Land. You shall not plant for yourself Asherah. Circle the word Asherah, of any kind of tree beside the altar of Jehovah your God, which you shall make for yourself. You shall not set up for yourself a sacred pillar, circle pillar, which the Lord your God hates. So basically you have judges appointed and also official. The Hebrew word for judges is shoptim. Okay, I'm giving that to you here, P-H-T-I-M. Shoptim, this is the word for judges. And you have the word for official, which is basically shotrim. The I-M ending is always plural. It's a feminine plural. The judges, the shoptim, they are the decision makers in civil laws. They are the decision makers in civil laws. That's good for the shoptim. Like I said to you, the T-I-M ending, it's a feminine plural. And the shoptim, they are secretaries. The official here, they are secretaries keeping records of the judges. They keep records of what's being done and said by the judges. Based upon what I read for you, these are city judges and also tribal judges. That's why I asked you to circle the word tribes in verse 18. According to your cities, in all your towns, and so on, by tribe of Israel, and they are city judges also. Scrolling down to verse 20, it says justice and only justice, but the word and only, A-N-D, and only, are in italic. They are not in the Hebrew original, so it writes basically justice, justice in Hebrew. So they need to be just. It's very emphatic, to judge rightly. The two words in italic and only are not in the Hebrew original. In verse 21, you shall not plant for yourself an Asherah of any kind of tree beside the altar of Jehovah your God. Circle the word Asherah. These were poles made of wood, like totems that you have in the city of Dunkins, but on Duncan, okay? These were poles made of wood, which is an abomination to the Lord. And you shall not set up for yourself, in verse 22, pillars. These are stone made, a little bit like the one you have in front of the White House in the United States. And you have many of them in Egypt. I had the opportunity and the blessing to travel Egypt to study before teaching Exodus, and it's full of them. And they are exactly made in the same system that the one that you have right in front of the White House because there is kind of a circle there, right in front of the White House. They were not allowed to do such a thing in the land of Israel because it's basically witchcraft and so on. Now we come to chapter 17, verse 1. We carry on with the same thing, the administration of justice, but we are still under the law of judges and official type of thing. Let's read and finish until 17:13. Come with me. I'm going to finish before this, but I'm going to read a few verses. You shall not sacrifice to Jehovah your God an ox or a sheep which has a blemish or any defect. Circle blemish and defect. For that is detestable thing to the Lord your God. If there is found in your midst, in any of your towns which the Lord your God has given you, a man or a woman who does what is evil in the sight of God, by transgressing his covenant, and he has gone and served other gods and worshipped them, or the sun or the moon or any heavenly host which I have not commanded. And if it is told you, and you have heard of it, so circle told you by you, rumor and so on, then you shall inquire thoroughly. Behold, if it is true and the thing certain that this detestable thing has been done in Israel, then you shall bring out that man or that woman who has done these evil deeds to your gates. Then that is the man or the woman, and you shall stone them to death. Let's carry on with a few verses here. In verse 1, we know that. We have seen this already, that a blemished animal should not be offered. It is an abomination to the Lord. You need to give, for sacrificial system, clean animals that are kosher. That's the word kosher. K-O-S-H-E-R, kosher. And then in verses 2 to 7, we have the apostate people issue. The apostate, the departure from the truth to worship different things and so on. And in verse 2 and 3, this is the apostate, those who leave God to worship different God and so on. Don't need to read it again. And in verse 4, if it is told you and you have heard of it here, it's investigation. Need to inquire if the situation of the worshipper of idols truly happened. That's the judges that makes it and so on. You have to have a thorough investigation. That's why in 4b it says, behold, if it is true and the thing certain that this detestable thing has been, everything that is mentioned above, has been done in Israel. Then you reach verse 5, the people need to be executed. The people need to be executed. Let's go to verse 6 and 7 that I did not read. On the evidence, verse 6, on the evidence of 2 witnesses or 3 witnesses, he who is to die shall be put to death. He shall not be put to death on the evidence of 1 witness. Circle evidence of 1 witness. Going to help you for the life of Christ. The hand of the witnesses shall be first against him. So circle the hand of the witnesses shall be first against him to put him to death. And afterward the hand of all the people, so you shall purge the evil from among your midst. So the first to cast the first stone is always the witnesses. You need more than one. You need 2 or 3 witnesses. In Deuteronomy 17, you need to have more than 1 witnesses. When you go to John, the book of John in the New Testament, chapter 8. John chapter 8 in the New Testament, in the book of John, verses 1 to 11. John chapter 8 verses 1 to 11, you have the story of the adulteress caught in the very act. And Christ says, he who does not commit that sin should cast the first stone. And one by one they went out, simply because they said that she was caught up in the very act. And only one party was being to blame right there. And nobody was willing to cast the first stone among the witnesses because they were false witnesses. It was not true. So they dropped the rocks and they all went their way without casting the first stone. They were violating the honesty of judges and so on, just to trap Jesus to see what he would say about that lady. Let's read verses 8 to 13 in one shot, and then I will make some comment. If any case is too difficult for you to decide between one kind of homicide, circle homicide, it's first-degree murder, or another, between one kind of lawsuit or another, and between one kind of assault or another, being case of dispute in your court, then you shall arise and go up to the place which Jehovah your God chooses. So you shall come to the Levitical priest or the judge who is in the office in those days, and you shall inquire of them, and they will declare to you the verdict in the case. You shall do according to the terms of the verdict which they declare to you from that place which Jehovah chooses, and you shall be careful to observe according to all that they teach you. That they teach you, it's the Levitical and also the judge and officials, according to the terms of the law which they teach you, and according to the verdict, circle the verdict, it's really court system, which they tell you, you shall do. You shall not turn aside from the word which they declare to you to the right or to the left. The man who acts presumptuously by not listening to the priests who stand before there to serve Jehovah your God, nor to the judge, that man shall die. Circle, that man shall die. Thus you will purge the evil from among Israel. Then all the people will bear and be afraid, and will hear and be afraid, and will not act presumptuously again. That's 8 to 13. So now you have a court of priests, plural, and Levites to witness the case. There was a king called Jehoshaphat. Jehoshaphat obeyed that law. Jehoshaphat, Jehoshaphat. In 2 Chronicles chapter 19, verses 5 to 11, Jehoshaphat was a good king and he obeyed that law. Concerning verses 10 to 11, which you shall do according to the terms of the verdict, and so on and so forth, I just read it to you. This is the highest court of appeal. The Levitical priesthood and the judges and the officials is the highest court of appeal. You cannot go to a higher court than this, like in the States or in Canada. And in verse 12, then the man who acts presumptuously by not listening to the priest who stand there to serve the Lord your God, nor to the judge, singular in that case, that man shall die. Okay? And that is a major way of cleaning evil here from the society. It's the death penalty. You're probably too shy to ask me if I am for the death penalty. I am for it because it's scriptural. First degree premeditated murder, like the shooting at the time of the Many examples, Trump, the last time, the ears and so on, and those who do premeditated murder, you don't negotiate the issue. That person should be put to death. That's all. In Canada, we don't have the death sentence anymore. So that's why there is so much crime, and they claim that they protect the society by not applying the scriptures, although we are under the law of grace. That's the way it should be. Okay? When you are proven to be at first degree with a premeditated murder, you just execute the person because it creates a fear for justice. You don't need to agree with me. You just need to agree with the scriptures, although we're not under the law anymore. You don't stone the person, but that person needs to be wiped out of the society. That's why we have so many repeat offending and so on. Lowercase b on your outline, the law of king. You will like this. Visualize your passage. It goes from 14 to 20 of chapter 17. Let's read the passage and then I will make a few comments. Come with me. I'm going to drink. 14 to 20. When you enter the land which Jehovah your God gives you, and you possess it and live in it, and you say, I will set a king over me, I will set a king over like all nations who are around me, you shall surely set a king over you whom the Lord your God chooses, one from among your countrymen, circle countrymen, and you shall set as king over yourself. You may not put a foreigner over yourself who is not your countryman, meaning no Gentile Jews over the Jews. Moreover, he shall not multiply horses, circle horses, for himself, nor shall he cause the people to return to Egypt to multiply horses, circle Egypt, multiply horses. Since Jehovah has said to you, you shall never again return that way, Egypt. He shall not multiply wives, circle wives, for himself, or else his heart will turn away. Now shall he greatly increase silver and gold for himself. Nor it shall come about when he sits on the throne of his kingdom, he shall write for himself a copy, circle 10 times a copy of this law, on a scroll in the presence of the Levitical priests. It shall be with him, and he shall read it all the days of his life, that he may learn to fear Jehovah his God, by carefully observing all the words of this law and these statutes, that his heart may not be lifted up above his countrymen, and that he may not turn aside from the commandment to the right, to the left, so that he and his sons may continue long in his kingdom in the midst of Israel. Okay? God's will for Israel was to have a king. It was God's will from Genesis chapter 49 verse 10. Long way before the king period.
Genesis 49.
Genesis 49 verse 10. It was the will of God to have a king here. Okay? But it has to come from the tribe of Judah. That's why Saul displeased God, because the people were impatient. They went too fast, and they chose a king from the tribe of Benjamin, and they had Deuteronomy. So they did not read the book. So in his anger, God gave them Saul, but the kingdom was taken away from him. And back in the book of Samuel, the issue was impatience. They did not want to wait for God. Kenneth?
Yeah, sorry, Francois. Where does it say it has to come from Judah? Did I misreading that someplace?
No, kingship is from Judah. That's the Davidic covenant. Always from the king, it's come from the tribe of Judah. Okay, I'll give you scriptures later where it says more specific, but it's based upon the Davidic covenant. Okay, and the Davidic covenant is given in the time of Samuel. They cannot elect a king from any other tribes.
You know, I never heard it like that. That's good.
Yeah,
I think Jesus is the tribe from the tribe of Judah is the
Correct,
king. But
absolutely.
like, this is new, this is inspirational to me, I didn't
Okay.
understand.
Good stuff. That's why he accepted Benjamin. But you have a scriptures, I can't remember, I think it's the book of Isaiah, of Jeremiah, that it says, in my anger I gave you a king. And he alludes to Saul. Okay, you want a king? You have chose him because he's good looking, because he was good looking. Yes, we want him to be a king. It was not the will of God. He needs to come from Judah and in the timing of God. Not from any timing. When God says, David was young, and it was the will of God to put David there. Back in Samuel's days, it was a wrong motivation and impatience of the proper choosing. They went from Benjamin, and God's choice was David to be the king. And David is from the lineage of Judah. Then in verses 15b, if you visualize your passage again, multiplying many things, 15b to 17, you have the rules of kingship. It has to be a Jew. When I ask you to circle your countryman in verse 15, shall set a king over yourself, the king has to be a Jewish nationality. All right? That's why they basically, in the life of the Messiah, they disown the kingship by making, we have Caesar as a king. It was a big blasphemy against the Torah, against the book of Deuteronomy. Caesar is our king, so they disown the rules of Deuteronomy and other books about the kingship. The kingship has to be a Jew. Verse 16, he shall not multiply horses. Solomon disobeyed this. Solid. 1 Kings chapter 10, he was importing horses from Egypt. 1 Kings chapter 10, verses 28 to 29. He was a horse fan. He liked it. The horses of Egypt, they look great and so on. The breed of it, but you don't multiply horses. Verse 17a, you don't multiply wives either. It's kind of fun. The rabbis came up with the amount of wife maximum, and the rabbis came up with their laws, 18 wives. Beyond 18 wives, you violate Deuteronomy, the passage that we look at right now.
Where does that say? Where do you see that?
In the rabbinical
Oh,
writings, yeah,
okay.
yeah. In the
It's
Mishnah.
not- It doesn't say in here.
No, it's rabbinic.
Yeah.
It's not. It's kind of all kinds of speculation with the rabbi. I'm
Okay.
just giving you the Jewish mindset of it.
Yeah.
The rabbi came up with this, and he should not multiply wealth. And basically, Solomon was guilty of these things. Wives, because it leads the people astray, because you worship their God, and that's why in Israel you have 3 mounts of offense in the vicinity of the Temple Mount, because they were shrine, because of the wives of Solomon, he became idolater and so on by addressing these gods and so on. Was a good king, but he was a sinner like you and I. Okay? Verses 18 to 19, we have 2 obligations right there. 18 to 19. Shall come about when he sits on the throne of his kingdom, he shall write for himself a copy. Circle a copy. Okay? Circle a copy. The word copy here in Hebrew is the word mishneh.
Oh, wow.
Be with me, because you need to know this. Is the word mishneh. It's an N. That's a mess. It's not N. It's not N. It's a mess. There you go. The word for copy here is the word mishneh. In a book, if you want to. So the Septuagint, LXX, Roman numeral X, LXX, it means the Septuagint was 70 members that sat to translate from Hebrew to Greek. They misunderstood the word copy. They misunderstood the word copy, the word mishneh, which is a book. means a book, Mishneh. They misunderstood the word copy and they translated the word, basically copy, as Deuteronomy on. Deuteronomy on. Deuteronomy on tuito. Write Deuteronomy with a N at the end. Deuteronomy on tuito in Greek. And Deuteronomy on, that's where the English copy of your Bible uses the word Deuteronomy, and it means the second law, and it's not proper. It was only a copy of the law. It's not the second law. Deuteronomy on tuito. So when you turn into the book of Deuteronomy, you understand that this is a mistake. It's not the second law. Because what is it? I speak French. What is the French word for the number 2? Deux. Deuteronomy, the second law. Onomion, it's law. Deuteronomy, it's the second law. And that's why the people say, lots of Bible expositor, they don't know about the suzerain vassal treaty, the marriage contract, and they say, oh, Deuteronomy, it's no big deal, it's only the second law. Not at all. It was a copy of the law put into a marriage contract. The Hittite vassal suzerain treaty. It was not a mere repetition of the law, because there are basically quite a few differences with it. So that's why the English Deuteronomy came from. But the Hebrew means not second law, but copy. So basically, to come back in the context, when you are elected as a king in Israel, you make a copy. You go to the scribe, because they have the scribes, they have the scroll of Deuteronomy. By the way, in the, help me out, in Qumran,
The Dead Sea Scrolls?
the Dead Sea Scroll, thank you so much, I had a blank. The Dead Sea Scroll, they are hidden somewhere, we don't know where. There is copies of them, and they have almost the totality of the book of Isaiah. Okay? So you go to the scribe and you say, make me a copy of the law, which is basically Exodus and Deuteronomy, and the 5 books of Moses, and he has to read it daily, as his devotional. As I encourage you to read your law, the entire Bible. Okay? So that's what it means. So you have at least now an idea of why the book en français, Deutéronome en français, in English Deuteronomy, comes from the LXX, and it's a mistake in the translation. The word Mishneh means a copy, not the second law. Are you okay with that? You sure?
Cool.
Good stuff. Second obligation is to read the law, verses 19 to 20. First obligation is to make a copy of it. Keep in mind that in the time of Deuteronomy and even in the time of the Messiah, keep that in mind. People don't know this sometimes. Need to go back into the 1st century and 1,000 years before. They only had the original scroll at that time, and it was very, very expensive to produce a scribal copy. These guys were their nails, and you can Google scribes pictures, Google image, and scribe of the Old Testament, and you will see they were working with ink, barely with the sunlight, and their fingers are all dirty, and they write in Hebrew, the copyist, and the letters are all bunched up together. Okay, you read backward. There is no verses at that time. It comes in the year 1000. No verses. Everything is bunched up together. And you have about 30 scribes in a classroom like this, and you have one scribe that reads the law, and these guys make copies. That's why some of them have mistake. That's why sometimes you have the Hebrew names that is spelled Josiah, and you go in a different book and he spells differently because they go fast and they carry on in the Hebrew language. That's how they made copies of the law. But my point here, I'm outside the topic completely right now, is that the king has to have a copy and read it. Okay? If the king was going to Value Village or any thrift shop, the scroll of the law should not be at the bottom shelf full of dust here for free. like we do here in North America. You can go to thrift shop today, you find Bibles there that have been dedicated back in the 60s and so on, never touched, never read. Okay, so this is it. Let's do 2 observations concerning what was taught right now. I would like you to note 2 observations. The passage anticipates that Israel will have a king. It's an anticipation that Israel would have a king because of all the rules that we just read, meaning when you will be in your land, I'll give you a king, because that's why Deuteronomy provides the rules for the king. And it arcs back to Genesis chapter 49, verse 10. If you ask me a good question, I write here a message. Sometimes I write on my note message, meaning I come with a message with it. Will Messiah during the Messianic kingdom, when he comes back and establishes the kingdom, will he have a copy of the law? Absolutely not. He is the Word. He is the law. He doesn't need a copy of himself. He is the Logos. He is the Memra, the very Word of God. Second observation, there were 6 basic rules. Under the second observation, let me make 6 short points. A, concerning the king, it has to be God's choice. 1 Samuel chapter 9, verse 15. 1 Samuel chapter 9 verse 15. Let's call it B, needs to be a Jew. Gentile cannot rule over Israel. Let me challenge you. Everybody listen to me. What kind of a period was Gentile ruling over the Jewish people? How do we call it? Daniel?
Times of the Gentiles.
You nailed it. The times of the Gentiles, when they were basically in the diaspora, in the Babylonian captivity. It was Gentile kings that was ruling over them during the times of the Gentiles. It was 1 Chronicle chapter 22:10 concerning to be a Jew and so on. C, to be God's servant and to represent Israel. The king was to be a servant and representing Israel. As a summary again, D, not to increase beyond reason everything that you know: horses, wives, wealth. Horses, it was for military purposes. Wives, to reproduce, and some for pleasures only. And political alliance. They were marrying wives that Solomon did to make alliances with Egypt. It's not allowed to do that. And for wealth. You know E, copy of the law and obey it. F, Solomon was guilty of violating all 3 areas. Solomon was guilty of violating all 3 areas. 1 Kings chapter 10, verses 14 to 29, and 1 Kings 11, verses 1 to 13. Quickly. A, God's choice. Number 1, if you want to, 6 basic rule. A, God's choice. Secondly, a Jew. Thirdly, servant, representative. 4, not increase beyond reason. E rather, a copy of the law. And just the last statement, that he was basically, Solomon was guilty in the 3 areas. Let's carry on. Let's take small c, the law of priest. It's going to be shorter. The law of priest. Come with me in chapter 18, verses 1 to 8. We read, we make a few comments, and we'll get into the occult. May God bless you, and may God protect you. Okay? The Levitical priests, the whole tribe of Levi, shall have no portion or inheritance with Israel. They shall eat the Lord's offering by fire and his portion. They shall have no inheritance among their countrymen. Jehovah is their inheritance, as he promised them, the Levites. Now this shall be priests due from the people, from those who offer sacrifice, either an ox, sheep, of which they shall give to the priest the shoulder and the 2 cheeks and the stomach. You shall give him the first fruit of your grain, your new wine, your oil, and the first shearing. Circle first shearing, circle that, of your sheep. For Jehovah your God has chosen him, the priest, and his sons, the priesthood, from all your tribes, to stand and serve in the name of Jehovah forever. Now if a Levite comes from any of your towns throughout Israel where he resides, and comes whenever he desires to the place which the Lord chooses, then he shall serve in the name of Jehovah his God, like all his fellow Levites who stand therefore before God. There shall eat equal portion, except what they shall receive from the sale of their father's estate. Not too many comments here, just a few. In verse 1, you have the inheritance of the priesthood. Their inheritance basically is God. Basically, verse 2, the priestly ministry, for the fact that they ministered to God as Levite, this is their very inheritance.
Was every single Levite a priest?
No, you need
No.
to be sons of Aaron. Okay?
Right.
To be
Sorry.
priesthood, you need to be a Levite from the lineage of Aaron. If you are a Levite without the lineage of Aaron, you cannot be a priest.
Sorry.
Verses 3 to 5, you have the portion of animals. They need to be provided. And including in 3, 4, and 5, you have the priesthood is hereditary. Sons of Aaron. I ask you to circle the wool here. Which verse was it? Verse 6 here? Verse 4. Okay, the shearing of the sheep. This is the only place in the Bible where it says that they should have a portion of the wool to make garments and so on. This is the only place in Deuteronomy. It's not mentioned in Exodus or any other books. In verses 6 to 8, you read it again. It's a voluntary service of the Levitical priesthood. It's voluntary, but it comes with compensation from the people. And his property can be sold, not out of poverty, but to serve full-time. That was his motivation right from the beginning. He needs to be willing to serve full-time. Basically, I'm not a Levite, I'm not a Jew, and I'm not under the law, but that's what I decided to do upon salvation. Not to own land and so on, in order to serve Jehovah full-time. And some of you, it's not sarcastic at all, it's kind of amazing. Some of you give you meat. So basically you're going back to the time of Deuteronomy here. So which is okay. Of course, a man like me lives on your donation, and that's why I buy food in my home. But a person like going back in Deuteronomy that commit his life to teach the scriptures has to make a living from the people that are being taught. It's important. All right? If he sells his property, should not be out of poverty, but to willingly serve full-time, and it should be the motivation of the priesthood right off the bat, but it's going to become corrupted in the scriptures based on the book of Malachi. Okay, occultism for 15 minutes. I don't know if we will finish it. I might ask you to stay a few minutes later. Come with me. lowercase d, the law against the occults. I'm going to go slower on this one. Chapter 18, the law of the occults, verses 9 to 14. Visualize your passage. All right, verses 9 to 9. When you enter the land which Jehovah your God gives you, you shall not learn to imitate the detestable things of those nations. Circle the abominations or detestable things, which is the same of those nations, the Canaanites. Verse 10 and 11, we have what is prohibited, not permitted. Verse 10 and 11, we read, there shall not be found among you anyone who makes his son or his daughter pass through the fire. One who uses divination, you circle divination or whatever word you have for it. One who practices witchcraft. One who interprets omens or sorcerer. One who casts spell, circle omens, sorcerer, casting a spell, circle medium, spiritist, or one who calls up the dead, circle calling up the dead. We start this. Human sacrifice is completely detestable to God. I don't have any need to explain that to you. It causes tribal ordeal. It can also be part of magical test. That's the first prohibition. You find this, sharpen your pens. I will repeat twice. Leviticus 18:21. Leviticus chapter 20, verse 25. 20:25. 2 Kings chapter 16, verse 3. Chapter 17, verse 17. Chapter 21, verse 6. Chapter 23, verse 10. 2 Kings 16:3, 17:17, 21:6, 23:10. Ezekiel 16:21.
I missed that 2 Kings 16.
3.
3. Ezekiel 16:21. Chapter 20, verse 26. Chapter 23, verses 3 and 7. The god Molech is always attached to it. The god Molech is always attached to human sacrifice. They worship Molech. That's pure demonism. Non-existent God. So Manasseh was worshiping Molech instead of Jehovah. And he's in 2 King and he did that. The second word that I want with you is the word where we find in verse 10, sons and daughter, divination. You circle divination. The Hebrew word there is kazam. Look at the board. The Hebrew word, if I would read in Hebrew, you shall not do kazam. In Hebrew, it's to divine. It means to divine. And to divine is a general term for all kinds of occultism. Divination. It's to divine. It's a verb. Like false prophecy, and to seek pagan God's will, demons. Scriptures, Joshua 13:22. Joshua 13:22. 1 Samuel chapter 6 verse 2. Isaiah chapter 3, verse 2. Jeremiah chapter 27, verse 9. Jeremiah 27, 9. Ezekiel chapter 13, verses 6, 9, 23. That's how we write references.
13, 6, 9, 23.
Number 3, the word that I would like, it's verse 10. One who practices witchcraft. You can call witchcraft is in my Bible, and you can put the word also augury. A-U-G-U-R-Y, augury. Concerning witchcraft and augury, it is the word meonim. Meonim. M-E-O-N-E-I-M. Meonim. The expression meonim means cause to appear. To cause to appear. Apparitions. Generally, the meaning of doing that, it's not exclusively, it's by the formation of the clouds. You have a picture in the sky that looks like this and that, and it caused to appear things. That's augury and witchcraft. Judges chapter 9, verses 36 to 37, you have an example of it.
Say that again, please.
Judges, JD, as abbreviation, chapter 9, verses 36 to 37. Number 4, verse 10 also, you have verse 10, one who interprets omens. Basically, it's an enchanter. Enchanter, like in the book of Daniel. And an enchanter is menahihist. Menashish, maybe is a better pronunciation. This is your number 4, although the childbearing is not there. This is your number 4, an enchanter. Okay? It means to snake. A serpent, to snake. Make a verb of the snake. An enchanter, it's to snake. And they do it by means of a liquid in the cup. They do it by means of liquid in the cup. Joseph gave an example of this, Genesis chapter 44, verses 5 and 15. He calls it the cup of divination. Genesis 44, verses 5 to 15, and 1 Kings chapter 20, verses 32 to 33.
Repeat those, please.
What?
Can you repeat those, please?
Genesis chapter 44, verses 5 and 15. And also 1 Kings chapter 20, verses 32 to 33. Verse 10, you circle sorcerer. Sorcerer, the Hebrew word is meashif. Meashif, it's spelled M-E-H-A-S-H-E-I-F. Meashif. It's practicing magic by incantation. Incantation. The book of Exodus chapter 7 verse 11. Exodus chapter 7 verse 11. Isaiah chapter 47 verses 9 and 12. Micah chapter 5 verse 12. Go to verse 11. Verse 11, It says one who casts spell. Circle the casting of spell. It's a charmer. Hebrew is hover shvar. Char. Hover char. 2 words. Hover char. It's the binding of a band. The binding of a band. Binding of a band to curse and to send a spell to control the people. I bind that person with a spell and so on. All the movies that you see of any kind of movies, good or bad type of thing, it's always reflect this in the realm of the occult and stuff like this when you watch Hollywood movies and so on. Just be aware of this. May God bless you. Don't seek these things. You can Google these things. You're going to obtain way more detail. But here it's kept in the biblical way. Psalm 58:5. You read the scriptures. I don't like to teach this. Isaiah chapter 47 verse 9. Psalm 58 verse 5. Isaiah 47 verse 9. The 7th expression is in verse 11, or spiritist. Spiritist. It's a medium. The medium, they consult familiar spirit. The Hebrew is Shoel Ovi. Not Alex Ovechkin, but Shoel Ov. That's 2 Hebrew words. Okay? And Shoel Ov means the asker of the pit. The pit is one expression, biblical expression for hell. Don't allow my life to go down to the pit. A Shoel Ov is the asker of the pit, consulting the dead. Spiritualistic mediums, fortune telling. Spiritualistic mediums, Saul consults the dead, the witchcraft at Endor. We have an example of this. Scriptures, Leviticus 19:31. Chapter 20, verse 6. Chapter 20, verse 27. All in Leviticus. 19:31, chapter 20, verse 6, chapter 20, 27. 1 Samuel 28. I think that 1 Samuel 28 is Samuel's example. 1 Samuel 28, verses 1 to 35. This is it. This is a long chapter. And finally, Isaiah chapter 8, verse 19. 8, verse 11 again. Or one who calls up the dead. Circle calling up the dead. It's called a wizard. One who consults the dead. It's a wizard. Yodoni. From the root yada. This is the root Yodoni. It's called Yodoni. The yada is from Yodoni is from the root meaning yada. It means to know by experience. To know by experience about spiritual knowledge. To know by experience about spiritual knowledge through communication with the evil world. I repeat, to know by experience supernatural knowledge. This is supernatural knowledge that we study.